Commissioners work session agenda for Tuesday, September 11th, 2012. Before we start, just ask for a moment of silence. It's the 11th anniversary of 9/11. We also have today Thank a Hero. I just want to recognize all those brave souls that day, all our first responders across the nation, worldwide, our troops overseas, and just ask for a moment of silence just to remember those brave souls that perished on 9/11, and moving forward, all those that are taking care of us, first responders and troops overseas. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. As a courtesy, if you have a cell phone or BlackBerry, if you please turn it off or put it on vibrate. If you have to have a conversation with the person next to you, I'd appreciate it if you could just take that conversation outside. With that, members of the board, we have the approval of the minutes for September 4th, 2012, the work session meeting minutes. With that, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
We have a motion for approval. We have a second. Is there any discussion?
There was I believe I was representing the Rural County Coalition for the board. Did you designate Al Wine for that, or it says in
Well,
here?
I didn't go to Mako on Thursday, and that email came and it was copied to Al and myself, and Al said he was going Thursday to Mako. I was going Friday, and I asked him to sit in on the meeting on my behalf.
Oh.
So, but
I thought
you were there
had
too.
asked me.
Okay, well, both
okay.
of you, I mean, what?
Okay.
6 of one, half does the other. The bottom line is I wanted to have representation at that meeting, and my understanding is through this Rural County Coalition that the presidents of each of the boards get the email. But I mean, I understand that the majority of the board was probably at that meeting. So I just asked Al as a courtesy when he had called and said, "Are you going to this?" I said, "No." I said, "Would you mind sitting in?" So,
you ultimately remember who you designated, so that's fine.
Okay. Okay, so.
I wasn't aware that we had just one representative.
Oh, well, I wasn't either. I just, I'm not sure what exactly, are you talking about Mako here, or?
We're talking about this conversation that you two just had.
Well, I didn't designate anybody, other than at Mako, Mr. Wine was going down, and he was copied on the email from the Rural County Coalition. And I said, "I'm not going." I said, "Would you mind, since you're going to be at Mako, would you mind sitting in on that meeting and just let me know what happens?" So
Commissioner Moore, you would advocate taking out that Mr. Wine represented the county, that no one actually represented the county, that it was, we attended the meeting.
Well, actually, my question had more to do with, do we have an appointment, is there only one appointee to the Rural Coalition?
I
Well,
believe
all
there is
members.
not.
I just asked Al to sit in on my behalf because I wasn't going to be there.
Understand.
Would you like to change the wording? Okay.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay, we have the closed session meeting minutes for September 4th, and again, we'll entertain a motion to accept those minutes. So moved. Motion for approval.
Second.
We have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have the Bainbridge Development Corporation informational briefing, Mr. Mike Pugh and Don Cap.
Good morning. Well, usually when I sit here, I'm sworn in testimony, but I'd like to begin by saying that I have had the good fortune to be elected chairman of the Bainbridge Development Corporation last December, after a number of appointments were made, and we have generally changed considerably the makeup of the board and the committees and whatnot of the board. I'd like to just take a second and talk about that, because the first part of the time that we were working was in organizing ourselves. It's Bainbridge, as you know, is a complicated project with a lot of moving parts. We have a very active board. All the members are actively participating in various committees. I serve as the chair. The vice chair is Bill Harrington. Chick Ham is the treasurer of the organization, and Cynthia Rossetti is the secretary-treasurer, or the secretary, I'm sorry. And that forms the executive committee of the board. We have 3 operating committees: the executive committee, we have a finance committee, and then, we have the Tone School property maintenance committee. And all of the various members are involved at one level or another with those different committees. After organizing ourselves, orientation took some amount of time in order for all the new members to become acquainted with the topic and all the complications, which we're going to talk a little bit about in a minute. But essentially, we have now a strong grasp of the subject, and it is a subject which is at sort of a critical juncture, and so I'd like to begin to allow Donna to talk about some of the key various pieces that the BDC is working on right now and their status. They are changing even as we speak, so we will try to brief you more frequently as time goes on now, but the first part of the year has been largely devoted toward just acclimation and learning and working with the various parties to gain a handle, if you will, on the movement of the commission. So Donna, I'd like to let you, if you would, take over with the specifics of the conversation.
Well, good morning, Commissioners. Since our last update to you, the Navy completed its screening evaluation and received those results in March of this year. As a result, the Navy confirmed the soil characteristics and determined that each of the sampling areas of that study exceeded Maryland's voluntary cleanup program standards, both residential and non-residential uses. As part of the Navy's environmental restoration program, a background study, a source assessment, and a business case model are currently underway, and we're expecting the results of those 3 tasks to be completed at the end of this month. Those tasks are critical from the Navy as they will determine the level of remediation required by MDE. They will also confirm the source of the contaminants and thereby determining the Navy's liability. And they will also evaluate the Navy's options. And just to give you an example of some of the options that have been thrown out by the Navy: purchasing the land back from the BDC, purchasing development rights, litigation, other alternative remediation strategies. And you, just to refresh your mind, the initial cost estimates that were presented by the Navy for just remediation of 100 acres for residential use was estimated between $30 and $68 million. That's just for 100 acres. That range is $30 million based on taking a foot of soil off, whereas the $68 million was based on taking 4 feet of soil off. And we do have subsurface contamination. The Navy has consistently communicated to the BDC, the senators, all parties that have been involved, that Bainbridge is a low priority, it's a low-risk site, and that they do not have the funding to remediate the property according to our current general development plan. We've also been in touch with Maryland's Office of Federal Facilities and Military Affairs, and they remind us that they expect continued reductions year after year in the nation's military appropriations, which has a direct negative impact on the remedial outcome at Bainbridge. Senator Cardin and Mikulski's office have been actively participating in the process, and the BDC, in conjunction with the developer, the state's attorney general's office, senators and subject matter experts, will be defining our communication and strategies as a result of these 3 tasks: the source assessment, the background study, and and the business case analysis. So in summary, the BDC has been actively working with all parties, at the federal level, the state level, and local level, in understanding the environmental conditions and what the alternative paths are. None of them look too rosy. I'll move on to the developer agreement. While the BDC and Ken Michael have been working to draft a revised development agreement that's agreeable to both parties, the notice to cure has been extended to September 19th of this year, and this is allowing for our progressive continued negotiations. The draft agreement provides the redevelopment efforts, the expertise, the leadership, the funding, and the political clout needed for Bainbridge. It acknowledges the environmental situation. It defines multiple paths forward with the Navy. It also identifies the future general development plan as the key tool for developing Bainbridge, because it talks about the land use, the remediation approach, the type. It also goes into timing and scheduling. I would anticipate that the board would vote on that document within the next 60 days. Moving on to Tome School, as you'll probably recall, in an attempt to intervene with the deterioration of the Tome School and determine its feasibility of proceeding with Tome as an independent project, the BDC issued an expression of interest on our National Historic for Tome School for Boys in, I think it was January of this year. Those multiple proposals were received. They were evaluated by the Tome School Committee, which is comprised of board members, state representatives, and also town representatives. And while the board is in the process of determining next steps with these proposals, both of the proposals that we're evaluating are capable of moving forward with their proposed projects. However, there's a distinct layer of complexity due to the level of, due to the remediation requirements of the entire Bainbridge property. So the board's going to have to determine whether Tome School can move on its own or whether it's tied to the overall remediation, negotiation, and efforts with the Navy. I would say that those are the three key areas that the BDC has been actively involved in over the last 2 years. I believe we pretty much keep you up to date, the most recent information being that the Navy has confirmed their agreement with EPA's statistics, and based on the contaminants, what they did is they confirmed, based on certain grids that they sampled, that those grids did in fact have the level of contamination that the EPA previously established. So I'm going to pass around the sheet just for you guys to look at, and you'll notice that the grids that are in yellow and red were the grids that were sampled by the Navy, and they all confirm exceedances of both the residential and non-residential standards. I just wanted to give you a little visual. And then I would also recommend that the BDC board meet with the commissioners in executive session to talk about any sensitive material, but also to give us the opportunity to talk to you about the BDC's financial operations.
Those items are, of course, the major moving parts of where we are at Bainbridge right now. Clearly, the future of Bainbridge is greatly complicated by the environmental condition. Clearly, we have to find a solution with the Navy to solve those problems financially, and that relies on ultimately an agreement with the Navy which is funded and will take place probably over multiple years. We've been advised by the Navy that there is no likelihood of a single large amount of money, that it would likely come sequentially perhaps through phases or otherwise. So finding a solution that the Navy will agree to fund through their processes is first and foremost the key to the movement forward of any development activities at Bainbridge. In the interim, the agreement with the developer is the basis on which our funding source continues, and we are able to maintain staffing and do the things that are required to be done at Bainbridge, such as monitoring the landfills and taking care of the physical portions of the property and dealing with all of the workings of the actual ownership of the property itself. The hope in the Tone School was that by the potential of breaking it out and finding a different path because of its rapid deterioration, that perhaps we could advance at least that portion of Bainbridge and get some activity started. It seems to be clearly Port Deposit's highest priority to try to get at least some activity going on Tone School as well as ours, and just the maintenance of the historic site is a high priority for all of the board members. So we're not at a stage where we can really announce any major events which have advanced the development of Bainbridge, but clearly we are at the point of critical movement on any number of fronts. And so we wanted to share that with you today. We'll be happy to take any questions that you have. And as Donna says, at some point we would like to meet with you in an executive session to be able to discuss sort of some of the financial elements and the specifics of the issue that are sensitive from a legal standpoint.
Well, to that point, when you're ready, just let Mr. Wine know.
Okay.
I have one question for Mr. Pugh. Just given your profession and your background, to take up 4 feet off that soil, does that compromise the site, and is it can the investment for doing that? I mean, I imagine you're going to have to take those big commercial pans that they use in the Midwest to scrape all the way down 4 feet and basically retrofit that site. I mean, is that?
Well, there's several parts to that question. In a normal commercial sense, the answer would be no. You would not find a typical developer going in with a development budget that included those sorts of costs, which comes back to the Navy again. But remember, the Navy, in passing title of Bainbridge, also maintains an obligation that if there is a problem on the site that was of their own making that's developed, that they have responsibility for it. So that's kind of the process we're involved in now. Now understand, in working with the Navy, that we are at present working through this as a negotiation process. We want to let the information develop for them to be able to make a judgment on what sort of offer they would make for that remediation. But nevertheless, to the extent that the Bainbridge Development Corporation finds itself dissatisfied with that outcome, there's also the other path that this could take, which would be through litigation. Clearly, we would like to avoid litigation, but it does remain an option. The dollars that are involved here are so significant for the cleanup of the site that we must play through this work with the Navy to get the best outcome we can in a reasonable way. As they keep reminding us, it is a low priority site. That means that we have got to try to work on a plan, developing a plan with them which is fundable over time, which will still obtain the objectives. But to your question, no, without the Navy participation, it is unlikely that a standard developer would come in and do all that work.
And also keep in mind that 4 feet for the subsurface is only in certain contained areas. It's not a site-wide.
Okay, all right, thank you.
In the contract where the property was transferred, was there a post-closing clause that continued beyond the closing that gave the option to the Navy to take the property back?
No.
So it's not in writing. I mean, that they said that may be a choice of theirs, but not if it's not mutually agreed to.
Correct.
Okay. Number two, are there environmental constraints in the Tome School area?
Yes.
Different or the same as the rest of the site?
Generally the same.
And how did that happen?
Well, that's why there's a source assessment being conducted, because we can't pinpoint the source of the contaminants, and therefore, not knowing what the source is, the contaminants have popped up in different places throughout the property. And you know as well as I do that, you know, the Navy also used Tome School during, you know, over a period of time, and there is contamination there as well. It may not be as high, the contaminant level may not be as high, but it's still significant enough that it doesn't pass residential or non-residential standards.
The other thing just to remember in all of this is that in the remediation context, it is the most expensive remediation is residential remediation as opposed to commercial or industrial. And generally speaking, the Tome School area is most likely the area that would have either residential or some institutional use or something where there would be a lot of people present, therefore requiring the most significant level of remediation. So whereas other areas might wind up being industrial or whatever, and therefore the costs might be less there. But Tome School specifically is you know, sort of a special case, and that's why we're wondering if between having someone who might be interested in working on Tome School, because our current developer partner is not interested in being a Tome School developer and has not been through time, that if we could find someone who would take up that case, that it might be able to also be worked on as an entity in a current path with the rest of Bainbridge. And that's what our goal is to try to get as many sort of balls in the air as we can to try to advance some development activities on Bainbridge as rapidly as possible.
Now, as you proceed with your studies and analysis of environmental, there may be other alternatives to 1 to 4 foot of soil removal, or is it?
Correct.
There may be.
Right, so it's not definitive that it absolutely positively cannot remove all this dirt.
Correct.
That's correct, but you have to remember that in terms of the position that we have taken with the Navy, Bainbridge was intended as a mixed-use development with a mixture of residential, commercial, and industrial uses. And that was the basis on which a plan was developed, and that's the basis on which we're saying to the Navy, you have, you know, this is the condition that you need to remediate to.
So you're negotiating.
So that's our position at this point, and that's
Right, that's your position, that's negotiation, and you're looking out.
they're working up their information to react to that, and so I guess as Sherlock would say, the game is afoot. No pun intended.
Let's address the priority issue a little bit. If you could fill us in. You said that the Navy has deemed this as a low priority. And I'm sure that you've had discussions with the federal and state elected officials about how we bump that up in priority. How has that gone?
The only way to bump Bainbridge up priority-wise is getting all the congressional political support and clout that we can at multiple levels, bipartisan, and that hasn't taken place yet. We do have, you know, selected elected officials that are interested and actively engaged in working with the Navy, but as far as having a bipartisan, fully staffed, fully prepared team, we're not there yet. As far as moving the priority up, there's certain criteria that the Navy establishes. One of those criteria we will not meet, and that's why the political clout is even more important. And that one criteria that we will not meet is that we are a low-risk site, because we don't have people physically on the site, living there, you know, subjected to contamination. You know, there's the health risk is much lower than hundreds of sites across the nation that we're competing against.
And nor is the environmental impact migrating off the site,
Correct.
contaminating off-site wells. We don't have that issue.
Right.
Where other sites that the Navy may have,
Right.
it's directly impacting off-site owners.
So that's not gonna change, that's a given.
Right.
Is there anything else, and I guess I'm asking is what help do you need from the commissioners, or when you do need help from the commissioners, please let us know.
Well, we will certainly do that. And exactly when that will be, we're not sure, because at this stage, the Navy is just finalizing their characterization. We literally, at the end of this month, are expecting to get information on that subject. We will have to analyze that, see how we should react to that. But at this stage of the game, I guess what I would say is that clearly getting the new development agreement is vitally important, because that sort of secures our financial health going forward. And the second thing is, over the longer haul, working with the Navy is where the real element of the future of Bainbridge rests. Now, I would also tell you that the Navy has, commended us to be patient, as they would, saying that it would not be unusual to expect something like this to take 5 years. Now, I can't answer the question of why it would take 5 years, but even no matter how many years it takes, I think that given our low priority status and ultimately how we come out with a plan, we would only at best expect it to come in phases, with appropriations of money coming along in support of an overall plan through time. So I don't believe realistic to think that we're, going to wind up with one big check landing in the account, 6 or 12 months from now. That's not the future. So this is a play that's going to take a long time. Unfortunately, I wish I didn't have to say that, but I think the accurate truth is that it is going to take a long time before we're going to be able to make a serious advance on Bainbridge, unless potentially the Tone School could be broken out and some sort of a short-term, or that could be the first phase, if you will, or somehow try to at least pick that spot as something to prioritize and work on. So that's the sorts of things that are in our minds, but whether or not they will appear in reality after the Navy does their work, we just don't know.
And on that note, I think there might be different options that you could pursue, whether it's just individually separating out the Bainbridge site and going, attempting to develop it independently might be an option. We last year reviewed brownfields legislation, which I think a presentation was given to VDC. Is there options in that area that you would qualify for funding on the state level, incentives?
There's not sufficient funding through the brownfields program at any of the state agencies that would be enough funding to even be able to do a commercial pad.
Okay, and have you had conversations with the EPA as to what options you have in developing the site given the current conditions?
What we have done at this point is, I'd like to just step back to the previous comment for a second. In the negotiations with the Navy, a full participant at the table is MDE, and it's MDE folks at a higher level, and they are conversant with and familiar with grant programs, with contacts within the EPA, and they're assisting us with trying to, once a path is selected, we believe that they will assist us in trying to find those avenues. But at this stage of the game, direct dollars to an uncertain situation is not the sort of thing that we would expect to happen short term.
And I would add to that, Commissioner Brunel, is that yes, we have been working with EPA actually longer than MDE, and both EPA and MDE have reminded me personally that this is a very complicated legal project that we're dealing with, and the complexity is from a legal standpoint, from an environmental standpoint, from an economic standpoint, I mean, and the list keeps going. I mean, you know, they continue to pound that, you know, in our heads, and they have stated over and over again, no BDC, you can't move forward with a piece of the pie. You know, they don't see it working that way. We've pushed that.
I understand that you've been very creative in finding other funding sources, such as the trees and the steel pilings. Have you explored possibly a cell tower?
No, we have not.
I would encourage you to do that.
Okay.
Anything else in these folks today? Okay, well then, when you're ready for your executive session with us, just let Mr. Wine know when to put it on our agenda.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Judge Whalen?
Yeah.
You're gonna come off the bench, Nick?
Well, I want to thank you for having us here this morning. Prior to coming here, we met with Mr. Wine and Mr. Whiteford, and they suggested that we present our request to the full board, so that's why we're here. Our request is a little more direct and more streamlined than the prior hearing. All we are here for is to request some money, so I don't know how that will go.
30 million, 68 million compared to this,
We are here today because we're seeking funding to try to continue a child incentive program, child support incentive program. Pete Carroll has been working with us for the last couple of years. Our funding is canceled this year in October. The program basically is designed to and has been very successful in getting jobs and employment for people who are obligated to pay child support through the child support enforcement program. The reason why I have an interest in it, other than the general community interest in it, it has had a significant impact on lessening the number of court cases that are brought to us by child support for people not paying child support. And to that end, the state's attorney has thrown his weight in for whatever it's worth, and the sheriff has backed us up also for whatever that is worth, because these people are incarcerated for up to 6 months for failing to pay child support. They get on the merry-go-round or water wheel or whatever, however you want to say it. They're incarcerated for not complying. They take up space, and we have enough violent criminals in the county where we certainly need the jail space for those people. We have had a significant number of reduction in child support enforcement hearings for contempt in the last couple of years. I don't know if we can take credit to that reduction for the program totally, but numbers do speak loudly. She's been able to turn in $42,000 in child support for these kinds of people who are criminal backgrounds, who are hard to employ, who basically a lot of them don't even know how to fill out an application or get to a job site, but they're willing to work, so they get a little bit of incentive, and so far it's been working. And I have presented letters to Mr. Wine, and I think he was going to forward those to you from the sheriff and the state attorney. Without boring you with the numbers are pretty impressive for a small investment that we have. I have Ms. Brown from Child Support Enforcement here, and also Ms. Kirby, who worked day to day with the program. I also want to point out, and this is before we get to their part of the presentation, is we have, through salary reductions in the circuit court, have saved the county several thousands of dollars by new judicial appointment. Salaries are a lot less than the old people were making, and also for the master sextons assistants making several $1,000s we have been able to save the county money in those areas, and I think it would surpass what we're asking for. But with that, I'll let Ms. Brown tell you the details and Ms. Kirby.
Initially, I applied for a grant through the Administrative Office of the Court for a Child Support Incentive Program. And we received that grant actually for fiscal year 2011. They granted it to us close to November of 2010. It took a long time for them to officially give us the award. At that point in time, we hired Ms. Carroll after we put out a proposal for somebody to come in and apply for the position. She has been remarkable since she's been here because A, she had a background in child support enforcement to begin with. Our program officially took off January 2011. With that period of time, she was able to get in many participants. By September 2011, we had 31 participants who were employed, and we had collected about $15,000. From July 1st, 2011 until June 30th, 2012, we have collected $42,000 in child support payments, and we have actually have a higher caseload of about 55 participants. Might be a little off. Ms. Carroll has managed to maintain a lot of contacts with employers all locally in Cecil County. They call her now and say, we have a gentleman, space available. If you have someone you want to send over, send them over. We've managed to get jobs for people who have criminal backgrounds. We have met with the bonding agent who's able to bond individuals, and the program was going smoothly and running smoothly. For fiscal year 2013, I applied again. My answer this time was, Nalanda, we've given you 2 years. Now you have to become self-sufficient in a way. And that is why we are here, because we need some assistance to continue to help maintain this program. It is definitely benefiting the community. It's benefiting the children. It's benefiting the Child Support Enforcement Agency, and it's benefiting the courts. It definitely, since I have been with the court system, I've seen a reduction in the criminal docket, the civil docket, and the parties and the individuals who are non-custodial parents are actually getting a benefit by making their payments, and I'm seeing a reduction in disputes, even custodial-wise. So I'm here today to request, hoping that you guys can assist us.
Good morning. As Assistant Director of Child Support, this Child Support Incentive Program has been successful in more ways than one. I do have the stats updated from the time period when we started the case. The total caseload was 76 cases with 73 absent parents. As of the end of August of 2012, we collected $66,000 being in the program. It's a good program because some of our people need structure, and we deal with many of them that has criminal backgrounds. So putting them in this child support incentive program, Ms. Carroll follows up with them on a weekly basis. They also need help at, like for medical, we refer them for medical, and sometimes, like I said, just that little hand that we have there. We've got a young man who, very basically illiterate, like he was not going anywhere, and I know this guy since I've been in child support for 20-some years. We got him into the program, got him into medical, now he's applying for Social Security disability, which we attach. It also helps in the beginning of our program, we're establishing child support, because so many times we had started the order just based on minimum wage, the guy's not working, and the guy didn't have probably the skills and ability to work. So rather than establishing an order, starting the guy gentleman out or the young lady out in arrears, we put them in the CSIP program. And we review that case maybe 6 to 9 days to see where they are. If they're applying the program, we'll go back in and give them a job and get child support going. Mr. Nakis and I sat down, we have a order that we send to, that they sign, agree to stay in that program, participate, whether civil or criminal. In our criminal cases, it helps because the guys are automatically up to jail, no program, you work with Ms. Carroll and get a job, and that'll help you get the money coming in. And I must say that in the last 3 years that this program's been in effect, it has helped with our program, with our stats. Not only that, somebody of our gentlemen need to be bonded. We have shows a contact down at the job starting center and on Route 40 there. They can get bonded through this program, which is a big help. We have a lot of, like I said, a lot of felonies in the background, felony backgrounds. So it is a worthwhile program. Hopefully we can keep this program, keep the money coming into our custodians and our children. So that's basically that. Thank you.
Is there any questions for members of the board?
Thank you for listening.
Yeah.
Questions, we'll be glad to try to answer.
Well, I noticed that a letter was also sent to Director Ricciuti
Correct.
for the other half. And I would like to hear from him as to whether he's going to support.
He's
Go ahead.
coming forward.
Pull up a chair.
There's no question.
All right.
Sit here, introduction.
And I'm somewhat surprised that half the funding is 13,000. That doesn't sound like a very. Is this a
Is
full
that-
time?
It's a part-time.
It's a part-time position.
Okay.
She works only on the days of child support hearings, which is Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays of the third.
This is the first time I've ever been able to sit in a judge's chair, so I'm a little. I don't think I'll be sitting here very long.
We're all in
As long as
trouble.
you have picture of justice.
Yes, I do support it. In fact, we will be trying to obtain funds from private sources, but this is a part-time position. And you talk about dollar cost benefit. Not only are we providing money to the absent, from the absent parent to the custodial parent, but we're putting people into jobs who have not had a history of working. So that's a second benefit. But where the real benefit in terms of sheer dollars to the county comes in is we're putting people to work who would be in jail. And just think about the savings there. So it's literally a win-win-win situation. And there isn't too many times you can say that. So we really do support it. And as I say, we'll be looking for alternate funding. But the alternate funding will just be a stopgap. I mean, clearly we have to consider this. We have to see a way that we can staff this on a permanent basis. And unfortunately, that means that government's going to have to step in. But it's a part-time position, and I think we're looking at what, about 30,000 a year? Is that the?
It's 27.5 total with French.
So this is an intervention not just with families, child support, criminal system, courts. It's also bridging the gap and getting people back on the right path and getting a job and.
And I think that's an excellent point, Commissioner. I think the point that I also want to make, and you've heard me speak here about this time and time again, it's another example of the superb coordination and collaboration between the courts, the Department of Social Services, the State's Attorney's Office, and the Sheriff's Department and law enforcement. And it just is something that we do very well here in Cecil County. And I think that's just another example of it.
So it's an investment in society. It's really.
Exactly, and it's paying off.
The numbers are very impressive in terms of the results. And one of the things that as you think through the cycle, this basically stops the vicious cycle that occurs in situations like this. When you have to kind of pull yourself back a little bit and not only look at the numbers, but what cycle occurs when there's not some sort of intervention. And
So many years, it was vicious cycle, put them in jail, that didn't resolve it. I mean, that's not doing anything. My job is to collect the child support. With this program, we've got somebody monitored it. The first time I've had that for the child support. I've been there 20-some years. So it is a good program, and I think keep it going will be helpful for our children in Cecil County, and the whole state of Maryland.
Well, keeps them on the straight and narrow, so God forbid, when they turn 18, they're not sitting in front of you, have done something bad because you're touching them at such a young age. And I that goes back to my investment in society. Is there's children are the ones that suffer through this process, and it's not the one individual that's being incarcerated. That's what I'm hearing.
The reason I'm here is as a member of the court, is because I'm not selling an idea that might work. This is a program that's already been working, so I said I would come over and try to convince the commissioners and the county to support the program.
And what's the plan for the next budget year?
We don't have one except for the county.
Would you
We
still
don't have
try the
anyone-
grant process?
I can always try the grant process, and I'm actually going to look into, with my grant that I do with all the other family court services, see if I can also intervene in there. I just couldn't do it this fiscal year because we have to submit our budget a year in advance. So for fiscal year 2014, I did put that portion in there as hopefully they will approve.
Well, it sounds like that this would be a grant that it could also be pursued by social services because of all the different layers it is affecting.
This particular grant, though, was, this opportunity came through the administrative office of the courts. So we were not eligible to provide, to apply for this particular one. But you're correct. There may be other grant opportunities for us to pursue. As you well know, the whole grant world is sort of very arcane, and there are certain rules as who can apply for what and for whom, and that creates a bit of a challenge. That's why we have so many different avenues with which we apply, through which we apply. I think at one point we're receiving somewhere around $1.5 million in grants from various sources, and it's very arcane because each grant has its rules as to who can apply. For example, it has to be government in some cases, nonprofits in others, and it's not a very clear, straight line process. But we have been very aggressive, we'll continue to be aggressive in pursuing it. Just unfortunately right now, a lot of the grant money is drying up because everybody's going the same direction.
Craig, what would be the process?
Sure. Mr. Ricciuti, in reference to this particular grant, we've indicated there's some time sensitivity because the term expires, I guess, in October. And the request here is the county for 50% of the funding, and they've asked you to potentially solicit half funding. I would imagine what the board would like to hear is that there's some level of commitment or tentative commitment to providing that other half, because that will help us determine. What we'll do is come forward with a budget amendment for at least half of it.
I can't guarantee it because I have another board meeting the end of this month, and we'll be asking the Donaldson Brown Fund to front the other amount of money. I don't want to speak for that board, but I have a hunch that they may probably be more receptive. But if that fails, we'll be looking for another alternative.
All right, we'll be prepared in any event. We'll have a budget amendment prepared, assuming the board is willing to come up with 50% of the funding, which I strongly suspect that they will.
Well, I definitely would like to see that there's for the following years that there are attempts made for seeking grant funding.
Oh yeah, I can assure you we will. It also depends on what is called child support incentive dollars, how much that is available, and so we have to look at various opportunities. And as I said, right now the state budget is problematic. I don't want to say any more than that. We have some challenges there as well, and because the federal budget is always another interesting challenge.
So we'll just have Mr. Whiteford prepare a budget amendment, and our next meeting will be September 18th.
Judd, while you're here, go ahead, please.
Do you want us on the 18th?
If you wanted to.
It's not.
We want me to be here? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
While you're here, you've been the court administrator. You have a new one that started yesterday.
Matthew Barrett is our new court administrator. He's a local boy, so to speak, and he's born and raised in this county. So we're very proud to have him on board. And he started yesterday and he hasn't quit yet.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As I notified the board on Saturday, we asked to deviate from the agenda today and get an update from Director Brooks on the horse rescue that appeared in the paper yesterday for an update.
Was this on the agenda?
It's not on the agenda. But what I said was I sent an email on Saturday suggesting that we place this on the agenda today for an update with more information.
Okay. Good morning. This is Laura Hudson. She is the operator of the Greystone Equine Rescue and Rehabilitation Center. She's going to speak to you in just a couple of minutes. We needed to bring you up to speed on what you read in the paper on Monday. That has to do with 17 horses that were in dire need. Last week we started to receive calls of complaint of abuse and neglect of this herd. And we went out to investigate. I went out to investigate to take a look at the actual conditions and what was there. And it was pretty clear that there were some concerns and that the herd needed to be evaluated. I approached the person there, the occupant, the caretaker. At the time, she agreed that there were some concerns. There was minimal feed on the property. There was minimal funding available for her to continue. I contacted Ms. Hudson to go with me and do an evaluation on the following day of the herd. And with her expertise and in working with the occupant who was there, we came to the conclusion that there needed to be action taken. A number of things began to fall into place with veterinary services from New Bolton Veterinary Center, who was cooperating with Ms. Hudson to try and get some of the veterinary needs addressed, because it was obvious that there were veterinary needs. The horses were basically, in all practical reasons, emaciated. It's been 2 years since they have had any veterinary care, any hoof care, any teeth care, things of that sort, let alone the quantities of food that were required by standard, were far less than what was being provided. So with that, we worked with the occupant there in a very cooperative way, and Ms. Hudson mustered her volunteers together, and then she took some actions to transport the herd to the rehabilitation center. She also had to take some actions with her own herd to relocate them so that her entire farm could be quarantined for these horses, because it was undetermined what the disease processes were that were present, which as of this morning it seems to be continuing. So we had over 20 people volunteering on Saturday. We started this process at 8:30 in the morning. 20 people with trucks and trailers and equine professionals to be there and assist us, and again in a cooperative way with the occupant to move those animals. The issue, for you, and that we'll bring before you, and I've asked Ms. Hudson to bring some of the preliminary figures that we're going to be in a cost situation. We're very, very fortunate, and she can go into more detail with that, with the veterinary services, but then just the day-to-day maintenance to get these animals back into health and get them adopted out so that they're no longer in dire straits. So with that, I'm going to ask if you would please, if you could spend a few minutes and go over some of the figures for the commissioners.
Good morning. I'd like to start first by saying that of the 17 horses that were on the property, we personally housed 16. One we were able to directly transfer to a professor from the University of Delaware, who came on site with some feed. She was in a very situation, was trying to help out, but they fell short kind of situation. Of the 16 horses, there are 2 mares and a 3-month-old foal. There are 5 geldings and 8 stallions. These horses on the Hennepy body scoring chart rank at about a 2. If you're not familiar with the chart, it's a scale from 1 to 9, 9 being obese, 1 being over there. So 2 is very close to them there. The horses need a very slow refeeding process. They're not to cause colic or founder. And several of them have some pretty serious medical conditions. We had New Bolton out again last night at about 11 o'clock because the foal spiked a fever. We had to do an ultrasound of the lungs. So there's going to be a lot of unexpected veterinary issues that come up, just because of the condition of the horses. So as far as the vet costs, I can only state what the vet was able to give me for the basics. I have amounts for feed, hay, bedding, dewormer. Feed is going to run about 16 bags a week, so that's $320 a week, $12.80 a month. Per day it's $45.71, and per horse per day it's $2.85. Hay, we go through 12 bales a day. That's $84 a week. Ballpark for hay, we don't know how it's going to be throughout the winter, but I'm going to say $5 a bale. So we're looking at about $420 a week, $16.80 a month, $60 a day, or essentially $3.75 per horse. Bedding for the stalls. Some of these horses definitely need some downtime in the stalls. They've been exposed to the elements. The location in which they were living did not provide any shelter. So they have lots of skin issues. There is an 18-year-old paint who has developed cancer on his sarcomas on his eyelids, his lips, and his nose from overexposure to the sun. Unfortunately, he will probably be one of the ones we have to euthanize. We are in the process at this point as well of establishing who can survive this and who cannot. And we have definitely pegged 3 of the older horses or stallions with existing conditions that are not going to be fixable. Bedding, it's going to be 15 bales a week. It's $5.35 per bag. It's $80.25 a week, $3.21 a month, $11.46 a day, and 71 cents per horse per day. Dewormer, we do that every 3 months, but that boils down to 4 cents a day if you break it down by horse. For all the services that we will have provided, as far as, we have no labor costs. There's no salaries. We are all volunteer. We have to administer the medical treatments. These horses need bathing, they need grooming, they need just basic handling and care so that we can get them to the point where eventually we can adopt them out to homes. And of course, any rehabilitation that's necessary. So what we're looking at in its entirety, just to keep the horses on the property minus that barrier, is about $1,225.25 a week. Comes to $4,901 a month, and $175.25 a day, which breaks down to $10.92 per horse per day. Now, if you were looking at these services in an environment that was a boarding facility, you would be looking at essentially, for all of these services, $475 a month times the 16 would be $7,600. There's a big difference between what we are able to do with our volunteer staff and versus what you would pay for outside of the rescue environment. So far, we have done an initial exam on these horses. New Bolton has charged us $18.40 per horse, which is a $30 discount from what they would give you if you called them out to your farm to look at your horse. Initial vaccines are $104.50 per horse. Coggins, which is a test for equine infectious anemia. It's a disease that cannot be treated, and it cannot be vaccinated for. It's $32.40 per horse. All of these horses, those who have remaining teeth, need to have them floated in order for them to be able to digest food. And that would be approximately $70 per horse with drugs included. Castrations, which is extremely important. As these stallions start to put weight on and start to feel healthy again, I am sure we are going to be replacing a lot of fence boards. So I would like to knock it out while it's absolutely, inevitable that it's going to have to be done at some point, but I want to knock it out as quickly as possible. New Bolton has said that because these horses were not vaccinated, they need their boosters for botulism before we can vaccinate, which is another 3 weeks from now. Horses have in the past, they've had cases where horses that were gelded without the proper botulism vaccines develop botulism through the incision wound. So we don't want to complicate things by giving these horses botulism. Castrations will run between 100 and 150 per horse. Having taken in stallions before, we paid close to $1,500 a horse. Horses that are a little bit older, say 4, 5, 6 years old and are developed, their castrations are more difficult. Horses that we had previously taken in were $1,500, $1,700 a piece. So to have a New Bolton be willing to do it for $100, $150, I think is really phenomenal. Boosters for vaccines will be $111.50 total for everything. Of course, unfortunately, euthanasia, which we don't like to do, but unfortunately we have to look at this not only in the rescue sense, but also in the business sense. And euthanasia would be $100 for drugs, including the catheter. And if by chance we have to euthanize, there is a removal fee. We used Janet Brown from Brown's Disposal to charge $250 per truckload. And that means they can haul about 2 horses in the back of their truck off the property. Some of the additional costs that we may be looking at: blood work, ultrasound to determine pregnancy. Apparently, the occupant believed that stallions and mares could cohabitate in the same fields without any chance of pregnancy. Unfortunately, I don't think that's how it works in the animal world. So both mares will have to be ultrasounded to make sure that they are currently pregnant as well. Several horses are lame, whether it's due to their poor hoof care or there's existing orthopedic problems, we would have to ascertain that. And then, of course, currently some are on meds, full, he's ill, he's on medications, antibiotics, Zantac. Some of the others will also need medication and medicated bags and things like that, just to get them to the point where their immune systems are back in range. As far as farrier goes, we have several farriers who will come to the farm, and several that we use, particularly Martin Mulligan. He's out of Fair Hill. He works for Patsy DuPont, and he is willing to give us a discount of $30 per horse for the trims. If we need to put shoes on someone, which absolutely we will not do unless they begin the training process, and they're going to be ridden, it would be $60 per horse. So right now, that's the expenses that we're looking at. We have applied with the ASPCA for an emergency funding grant. They will give us up to $500 per horse, not to exceed $15,000. There is also a Brennan Equine Welfare Fund. They don't typically give emergency grants, but they are to read our grant proposal. There's Thoroughbred Charities of America. They focus strictly on thoroughbreds. We did take in a few thoroughbreds, but we also have a whole bunch of mixes of other things that they won't cover. And Equus Foundation may or may not. We are a 501c3 private operating foundation. Some of these grant giving organizations will only give to public charities, and we have not shown enough brought in by donations over the last 4 years to qualify as a public charity yet. So we are asking for any assistance that the commissioners will give us in helping manage these horses financially. We took our 11 horses that were currently in Rising Sun. We rented 3 barns at Fair Hill at the park, and we have moved them to that location so that we can provide quarantine for these horses. So our expenses have grown tremendously, and we were glad that we could help, and we feel as though we are definitely fulfilling our mission in what we do. We're going to need some assistance to continue doing that.
Director Brooks, I don't know if you know the answer to this or not. Were there any previous complaints made to the SPCA about this situation? Or?
To the best of my knowledge, yes. All right, that did occur, and in our interview with the occupant, she had stated that she had received a visit about 2 weeks prior.
Well, I can add to that. I've been in contact with Jerry Dawson, who is the animal control officer of the SPCA. And it just so happened he was telling me about the situation, and he was in the process of getting donations together for feed. Didn't know that the extent of how many horses were actually affected, but he had relayed to me that by law he wasn't allowed to cite because the scope of the animal control ordinance doesn't involve large animals, which really had me concerned with our intervention on this site, which I think we're going to have a discussion on later. I commend you on your on the volunteer helping the horses. It's very concerning that the care that these horses have been receiving. I understand she says she's the not the owner, the what was the word she used? The it was in the newspaper article, but no, she was overseeing the care of these horses, not that she was the owner. But I would question as to whether she was the owner or not. And bringing them in from out of state and not having the certificate of health, that just shows you the importance of having that paperwork in order.
She did provide us with several registration papers. These horses are registered in different registries. There's an Irish Sport Draft. There's a registered Andalusian. So
excuse me, does someone have their phone on?
I thought I had it off. It's mine. I thought I had it off.
Okay, Ms. Bowlesby, thank you.
And her name was listed as, all of her addresses on those registration papers were from North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And I have several jockey clubs cases, which of course aren't registered to her, but the horses were raised and registered with jockey club as well.
I'm just really concerned with all the amounts that you just listed, and how much are we opening ourselves up to other complaints that we're expected to follow through on. The horse rescue missions are commendable, but I would question as to this isn't the scope that our animal ordinance currently encompasses. And I believe it was the intent of the Board of County Commissioners to make sure that we nail down that definition or the scope on the new ordinance to limit it to dogs.
May I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Maryland State Law, Article 27, Section 59, is the minimum standards of equine care in Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
It's the state of Maryland's laws, and there are 7 points of minimum care standards. And these are the sorts of things that we go out and evaluate a farm location with horses that are taken into consideration, as well as the condition of the horses. If animal control is not going to be enforcing these, who is for our county?
I wanted to have the animal control officer at the discussion this afternoon to answer that very question, and I was hoping that we'd get some direction from our attorney as well. That is a question I have.
I don't think we have an answer. But I'd like to thank you for taking on this challenge, number one. I'd like to thank Director Brooks for initiating and doing something about this problem. Thank you. But I don't think that citizens and taxpayers of Cecil County want to adopt a bunch of horses forever. And I know that even in our animal care and control ordinance, we expect our animal care authority to hold the animals for a minimum of 8 days. Now,
5. Current
I think
ordinance is 5 days.
we increased it.
We haven't adopted that ordinance yet.
We did adopt the ordinance.
Oh,
It's not effective until
Thank you.
October 1st. It's not, but it went from 5 to 8. It doesn't matter if it's 5, 8, or
Well, they're holding them for
12.
8 days.
And I think it's reasonable for the county and the taxpayers to fund a certain period of time to cover these costs. But we need to say that at some point, that's it. And I think that you and we and everyone in this community needs to get together and find others that are willing to step up and either adopt these animals or pay money for their support. I don't think the taxpayers want to do this indefinitely. So I would suggest that we, the commissioners, agree now on how far we want to proceed with the care of these animals and the support of these animals, and then they will have to, you'll have to figure out what you want to do with them after that. Whether you want to adopt them out to others, you want to take them to New Holland, you want to put them down, I'm not suggesting you should go that course, but there are many options. There are many options out there, and I really, really, really hate to put that burden on you, because we have a problem. We're dumping it on you, and I really apologize for that. But that's what happens when you take on the rescue business, whether it's cats, dogs, or horses. That's a big burden, because when you say, well, we're a no-kill shelter, well, that's just ridiculous. The fact is that eventually horses, animals get sick, and to say that you're going to keep them alive forever is just not practical. So I'm suggesting that the commissioners make a decision on how far and how much time they want to put into this before they say it's now your problem. But I do believe that we are obligated to do some of this. And I'll do my fair share. I'm going to be making hay this week, and I'll get you a whole wagon load of hay to help you out. But we need a lot of the community to step up that can afford this, and not just every taxpayer.
Well, and my point is, I was in the building Friday, and Richard had emailed those photographs of those horses, and I mean, they were just so emaciated at the end of the day. I mean, I've just never seen anything like that before. And to your point, I mean, I don't think anybody endorses cruelty to animals or any of those type of things to what happened in the situation. So I mean, we're all in this together, in my opinion. And I think what I'd like to see from my perspective is what options are out there similar to your group. You mentioned all these other groups, and what we can put together is kind of like a plan moving forward here, without the county having to kind of be the ultimate responsibility here. I mean, I think you stepped up, obviously. In fact, one of the ladies who helped you called me yesterday to tell me the whole situation, and I didn't even know she was on the rescue, and explained some of the details. And it was nice because she just called out of the blue, and I was like, who's this call? And then she said, I just want to let you know I helped out. And so to that point, and to Commissioner Hodges' point and everybody else, I mean, is there something we can put together, or you can put together to say, okay, look, these are our options moving forward. This is what the county, what we need to do here to kind of find some homes for these horses. What's available in terms of donations or groups out there?
We've had a tremendous amount of community support. I have emails, phone calls. I left my phone in the car because I knew it would be blowing up when I came here. A lot of people wanting to volunteer, people wanting to, do a lot of work around the farm. Not too much in the donation. I think we've gotten $50 in so far. But I do have people looking into, the woman who took the horse from University of Delaware has a friend who has a foundation that does things with thoroughbreds. We are exploring every avenue. And we are hoping, of course, that the article in the paper gets people aware of what just happened. We want help. We know Versailles has donated goods, buckets, medication, things like that. I think that it's going to take a long time, being a year, for some of these horses to recover if they make it. Like I said, I think there's at least 5 that may not. That will be, determined probably in the next couple of months, because they're either going to be standing up or not. So, as far as that goes, I mean, I came to the rescue because of my passion for horses, because we want to provide a service to Cecil County, one that hasn't really taken off. I think educating people prior to these things happening may alleviate these large-scale rescues. I had quoted in the paper, I don't know if you read it, there's something about a drunk driving class or a bad driver class. You lose your license, you get to go to class and learn what happens when you're a bad driver. I don't suggest that we do slaps on the wrist, but I do think that if we educated people on feed and nutrition and basic course care. I am an adjunct professor at Cecil College. I'm a program coordinator for equine studies. We offer an entire AA program in equine studies. We don't expect people to be able to pay for that, obviously, or the county to pay for people to go to our classes. But I wonder if some way, if we educated people, we could avoid these situations because we've hit them ahead of time before the horses look like the ones in the picture. So, and I would like to offer my services to the county to do that. As I'm a qualified since I teach feed nutrition, reproduction, basic course care, all that stuff at the college, in hopes that we can just, across the board, correct the situation. As far as this goes, this is going to be tight for us because we already have 11 rescue horses. Adoptions do well in the spring. We adopted 6 out this past spring. I don't expect anyone to be adopting a horse in the winter. Most people are trying to pawn them off on us. And so I would definitely need assistance throughout the winter until I can get some of my current adopted in the spring, which would then alleviate the number of 27 to something other.
Can you document your highest needs right now? So hopefully that would be in the paper that people could contact you if they were able to help.
Or I don't remember seeing an address if people wanted to send donations in from the community. I don't remember seeing an address in the article. Do you want that? I mean,
yes.
Because we may be approached,
yes.
And so where can people send donations?
It would be 1755 Principio Road, Rising Sun.
And the list of the highest needs that you have right now?
I think the highest needs we have right now are going to be, feed and hay. Hay is, going to be expensive, I'm told, by the farmers. We are going to be going through probably 400 bales of hay a month between the 2 farms. Once the grass disappears and they're forage-based animals, they have to have grass or hay. So hay, any donations of hay. Feed, we use Gifford's feed, and he knows exactly what we use. We use Triple Crown Senior. People could go to Gifford's and make a donation there that could be directly for our feed. I think the vet bills are going to be expensive.
I was going to ask about that. And why was New Bolton Veterinary Center chosen, or did they just happen to?
They have been our vet. We get a 25% discount when we go in the hospital with them because we use their field service. We have transported several horses to New Bolton for surgery and things like that.
And they're in Pennsylvania?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I would definitely solicit other veterinary care as well that might be donated. I'm sure we have a number of veterinarians in the county, being an equine county.
We do have a few, but I do not believe that they have the qualifications of New Bolton Center, meaning that they are a teaching facility associated with the University of Pennsylvania. When New Bolton comes out, I get 4 to 5 vets. I get a team of vets and students working with horses. The experiences that I've had in the 10 years I've lived in Rising Sun with local veterinarians, they show up when they feel like it, or when they can squeeze you in when your horse is colicking, and you've given him every bit of banding you possibly could. The reliability and actually what they're able to perform in the field is limited compared to New Bolton, which is why we chose them.
Okay.
No, I failed to mention, and this is important, that we should hold owners of this horses accountable. And I'm going to leave it up to others on whether there should be any criminal action taken. But as far as financial, and I know you can't get blood out of a turnip, but the property owner must own that property, have some equity there that should fund some of this. Then they should be held responsible too. If you own property and you allow this type of activity to happen on your property and take a blind eye to it, then there's a problem. Okay, so yes, it's true. Maybe the property owner will not say they're not my horses, not my problem, but they allow that to happen on their property. They can't be that blind. So I think that others that were associated with these, whether the ownership or whatever, needs to be held accountable. And they need to contribute.
On that note, I had asked Director Brooks if charges were filed, and I believe you said they weren't at this point. And I was very concerned about that, with the horses being seized. That we really needed the charging documents to cover our position. Are you able to charge as in your current position?
We have not looked at charges because there was no seizure. We didn't.
She voluntarily?
That's correct. She relinquished them.
And that's in writing?
Absolutely. Very
I
good.
relinquished the papers for each horse, which we all signed.
That's reassuring.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that were the case though, Director Brooks, would you be able to charge?
It's not within my powers to charge. I would seek the legal counsel of the county attorney.
I think it's up to the state's attorney. I think the state's attorney,
Okay.
the state's attorney needs, somebody needs to take this to the state's attorney and say, hey, here's a problem. Are you willing or able and willing to file a charge? And this should be a violation of the state law, and he should make that decision. But somebody needs to take it to him and say, here's this case. Do you have what it takes to, or is there been enough violation of the law to charge someone for it?
Okay, and this
But that, in my mind, that's not the most important thing that we need to do here. We need to take care of the horses. That's what we need to do.
I think you just identified though a gap in our animal control interim plan, that we no longer have an animal control officer that has the power to go out and have charging ability. And it's something that I would like to discuss later on.
Do that this afternoon, obviously. I think number one, we need to figure out the county commitment to this and then the time limit too. I mean, from what the discussion I'm hearing here today. So I think at the end of the day, we need to figure out next steps here from this briefing in terms of the county commitment and then the time limit of that commitment. And moving forward.
We'd like to have further discussion on that this afternoon along with our topics.
Is there any additional information you could share with us, even if it's not today, on some of these rescues or other avenues, or kind of the scope of work to take care of these animals moving forward?
Is there any way to put that in a spreadsheet, itemizing the categories of cost and the feed and the veterinarian and hoof care and all this good stuff, and put it in writing for us?
I think one of the things that I need to recognize, especially for Ms. Hudson, is we were going to deal with this one way or another. The conditions of those horses were such from the complainants, who were professional equine professionals, that the horses were in danger of dying at any time. I think she would concur with that. The veterinarian certainly concurred with that, and the forecast for the animals is in question. That would have been dealing with it in the negative. In this way, through Greystone, through the community, through some, through the party of volunteers, we're dealing with this in the positive. We didn't have photographers taking pictures of carcasses laying in the field, which, quite honestly, that was one report that we got the one day, which was not the case. So as we look at this, and certainly as you all contemplate this, I think it's appropriate that we look at the positive side of this and what came out, as opposed to what it could have been had this intervention not taken place.
And I agree with you there. I think it was a noble cause on your behalf, and I think just the fact that all those volunteers came together and gave their time and energy and resources was a very positive thing.
But it's going to take a lot more.
Oh, I understand that, but we'll look at the other alternative. I mean,
Right.
if you'd seen the picture that Richard had emailed out on Friday, I mean, I just got sick to my stomach that somebody could let an animal just basically look like that.
Yeah, I don't dispute that this was a desperate intervention that needed to be made. I think we just need to be extremely careful of opening ourselves up to liability, and also the scope of commitment that we're now identifying for animal control. I mean, this was the whole discussion was through our animal control review process was how big was the scope of review or enforcement. And current SPCA, their contract was limited to dogs. And, you know, in a perfect world, we would open it up to all animals, but our resources are limited. Other areas that have looked at enforcement of all animals, it was a financial hardship to enforce. So this opens it up to a conversation of how can we effectively keep situations like this from happening. And I think pulling in the rescues and providing support to them